saffron? Is there anybody maybe that hasn't heard of saffron before? I can't hear anybody. So, are the people that are in the room, are they able to respond?
Yes. Let's see. Yes, we've heard about saffron. Can I be y'all's mouthpiece for tonight? Is that okay? Okay, I will take and relay questions. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, how many people that are here, wherever you are, how many of you have bought saffron?
Oh man, we got hands raised all over the place.
Okay. All right, cool. How many people have cooked with it? And obviously some of you have now because you excuse me, you had it tonight. Have most people cooked with it?
Yep.
Yeah.
We have yeses around the room, yes.
Okay. You're going to have to speak up, whoever is the spokesperson for the group that's not online. It would be great if someone took charge and said, yeah, everybody, or
Yes.
5% or something. Anyway, okay.
Yes.
So most of you have cooked with it. Everybody? No? Yes?
Most. That is it. There's a handful that have not.
Okay, good. How many people have actually grown it?
We've got 2 people with hands raised.
All right. Where are you from, you two?
Austin, Texas, and Bastrop, Texas.
And you've actually gotten flowers and you've gotten a harvest out of it, yes?
Yes.
All right. Hot diggity. That's good to know. Okay. So, what is saffron? For those of you that may not be so informed, some of this you may know more about than I would have thought. So, it's the world's most expensive spice. It costs between $3,000 and $9,000 a pound. US growers right now are getting $25 to $75 a gram, which is equivalent to $11,000 to $34,000. Holy smokes, that's a lot. Now, before Trump took over, and before the price of gold went up, saffron cost about the same per gram as gold. But now gold is going through the roof because nobody believes that our economy is secure anymore. So they're buying gold instead. But anyway, so it gives you a perspective for how valuable this spice is. Okay, so saffron is the dry stigmas of Crocus sativus, and over there on the right-hand side, you can see the stigma there. Each flower has usually 3 stigmas. Occasionally it might have 5, but generally it's 3. It's produced from a corm, and the corm produces leaves, and then the flowers come up from there. And I'll go through the life cycle soon. It's a fall blooming crocus, not like your spring blooming crocus. It's been in cultivation for over 3,000 years, probably originated from Greece or Crete. It's been grown in the United States for over 300 years. It was the Mennonites that brought it from Germany to the US. Okay, but despite all that, about 80% of the saffron that we consume comes from Iran. Okay, so just to give you an appreciation here, all these yellow blotches are where saffron is grown. Probably it's grown in a few other locations that aren't listed here, but those are the major ones. And it could grow in probably 75% of the US based on the cold conditions. Okay, just to give you an idea. You know, if anybody has questions as I'm going along, feel free to interrupt me. Okay. Okay, so the US imported 193 tons of saffron in 2023, valued at $18.3 million. So that's why it's worth trying to grow it in the United States. Okay, so where is most of the saffron grown? Well, it's grown in over 110,000 acres in one particular province of Iran, the easternmost province of Iran. And this shows you what the soil looks like in many of the areas where saffron is grown. It tends to have very low fertility, tends to be a bit on the dry side. And one of the reasons that we thought that growing it in New England had potential is because our soil, the organic matter tends to be at least 5 or 6%. So it would be a much more fertile environment in which to grow it. Okay, so what isn't saffron? So all that glitters is not gold. And because saffron is such an expensive spice, it is considered the most frequently adulterated spice in the world. And this little package over to the right says it's safflower, but it's called Mexican saffron. Luckily, in this particular package, they actually are honest in saying what it really is, but it is very common for packages that say they're saffron are in fact safflower. In fact, sometimes in some places they actually take wood shavings and they dye them and they put the wood shavings in. They might put a little bit of saffron, but most of it's wood shavings. Okay. All right. What is saffron good for? You obviously, most of you have used it as a culinary spice, and that's what most people think of it as. But if you look online, it is believed to cure all sorts of things. ADHD, menstrual cramps, high blood pressure, cancer. Does it cure all those things? I don't know. There's been a lot of research over the years. Some of it is not as reliable as others. So I can't say that it is. If we could determine that saffron extract clearly had medicinal attributes, we could sell it a whole lot faster in the United States than we do right now. It's often used as a specialty crop addition, like saffron infused honey. At one time, Ben and Jerry, you know Ben and Jerry's ice cream?
Yes.
I hope you all do. Of course, it's not owned by Ben and Jerry's anymore, but they used to color their French vanilla ice cream with saffron at one time. It's used as a dye and it's used in liqueurs. Okay. So why is saffron so expensive? Almost all of the processing of saffron is done by hand. And just to give you an idea, it takes 4,000 flowers to make 1 ounce of saffron, or 28 grams. Generally speaking, just for sort of home gardeners, they need to be thinking that they need between 140 and 160 flowers to get 1 gram of saffron. Okay. So I'm just going to move on. The average saffron yield is about 8 pounds per hectare, or 4 pounds per acre, which is potentially equivalent to $12,000 if you looked at it. So on the right-hand side here, you can see this is how they pick it in Iran. And that is an amazing field of saffron. It's not as common to see it as densely packed in the United States as you're seeing there. It used to be grown regularly in Italy and Spain. And what they used to do is when the flowers would start to bloom, they had a bell in these remote villages and they would ring a bell and all the women would come to process the flowers. And that's what you see in the left-hand side there. Okay. So why grow saffron in Vermont? And that was the question that everybody asked us back in 2017. And the reason the way this sort of came about was we had an Iranian graduate student or postdoc here, and he said one day, why don't you grow saffron in Vermont? And I said, because it's too cold. And we ultimately determined that that wasn't the case, but it got us thinking. And so, Vermont is a special place. It's very agricultural, as you can see in these pictures. But 90% or probably 95% of our farms are considered small according to the USDA. And a small farm generates less than $350,000 gross per year. That's before expenses. So farmers here in Vermont or even throughout the United States really are not making very much money. So we're sort of known historically for our beautiful red barns and green pastures and black and white and brown cows, but we are losing so many dairy farms. And some of that is because of the huge factory farms that are producing milk in far more efficient ways in California and probably Texas for that matter. Anyway, so we really value our small family farms, and the key to their survival is diversification. So we have lots of vegetable growers, and we believed, and we still believe, that saffron is one crop that could help to offset their low revenues. So ultimately we did, as I said, we determined that saffron would grow in Vermont. And the other key to saffron's suitability for our state is that the greatest labor demand for saffron is October and November. That's when the flowers bloom. And that's when most of the field work is done. And so, especially for vegetable growers. And so we thought very similar to maple syrup. Maple syrup we produce, Vermont is the largest producer in the United States, actually, despite our small size. And one of the reasons that farmers produce maple syrup is because you produce it in April and May, or even in January and February. They don't have anything else to do. If they had to produce maple syrup in June and July, we would never get maple syrup in Vermont. So saffron is sort of at that other period of time when growers have a little bit of time on their hands. Okay, so now do you have any questions yet?
Yes, we've got one.
Yeah.
Is there a use for the purple flowers?
Is there any use for the purple flowers? We just saw those pictures.
I'll get to that sort of at the end of this, but that's a great question.
Okay, another question?
I was just in Vermont. Where are those fields in Vermont?
Where in Vermont are the fields? One of our members.
All over.
Yeah.
From northern Vermont, where it's very cold, it's zone 4, to southern Vermont, and really it's now grown somewhat as a result of our work. It's grown in Oregon, Washington, California, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa. Anyway, so it's grown all over the place now. Okay, so first, if you're going to grow something, you got to get to know the crop. So first, you need to know, don't be fooled. There are several other crocus species. The only one that you can produce saffron from is Crocus sativus, which is there on the left-hand side, and you can see the beautiful stigma sticking up there. The spring blooming crocus doesn't have a stigma at all. These on the far right-hand side are a couple of other fall blooming crocuses. All of those three non-Crocus sativus are toxic. They're poisonous. So don't try and eat those. Okay, so Crocus sativus is a sterile triploid plant. That means that the flowers produce no seed, and all propagation is done vegetatively with the corms. Okay, so we're going to go through the life cycle now. We're going to start in September. So in September, or even in August, that's when you first plant the corms. And you can see here on the far left where we've planted the corms. They begin to sprout fairly quickly in September, and we usually have flowers by October or November. That is largely driven by cold temperatures. And so this year, for example, in Burlington, we haven't had a hard frost yet. And so our flowering this year is a bit slower than it has been in other years. Okay, so the flowers bloom, and you can see pictures of here's the corm with the roots starting to come out. Here's what it looks like if you pulled it up. And the interesting thing about this is this picture on the top here, the top left. You can see that's the mother corm there with the roots growing really well. And then all these funny little side shoots along with the flower. That is the corm initiation that you're seeing from November to June. And so that's when the next generation of corms are produced. Okay. So you can see another picture here. Here, the corms are getting a little bit bigger here at the top between November and June. But all winter long, this is what always confuses people. All winter long, the leaves remain green. It's not like a spring crocus where spring crocus around here comes up early in the spring. The leaves come up, the flowers come up. Maybe the leaves last for a month and then they all die back, and then you don't see them again until next spring. That's not what happens with saffron. This field on the right is what the saffron fields look like in Holland, where most of the corms are produced. Okay, so here's another picture of the corm with all these baby corms or secondary corm. Sometimes they're called daughter corms, secondary corms, baby corms, whatever you want to call them. And the mother corm, that we started out with here, that we planted in August, by next June or July, that mother corm is dead. It's at the base of this clump of new corms that will become the next generation. So then by July, those green leaves that we had all winter long, even in Vermont, they stay green. By July, those leaves are all brown and they sort of blow away, and you have bare ground until August when they start coming up again. Okay. Are there any questions?
We do have a few questions in chat.
Oh, I haven't been even looking. Can you check? Can you keep
Yes.
monitoring the chat? I'm not very good at that when I'm talking.
So someone asked, do the plants require chill hours?
Well, yes. And I can't tell you I don't think of it as degree day units. I haven't, people don't seem to use degree day units as a means of estimating when it's going to bloom. It may, we just haven't had the funding to look at that more closely, but it gets complicated because degree days are based on air temperature, not soil temperature. And the corms are responding to soil temperature. So just to give you an idea, so I have this listserv with lots of growers from all over the country and all over the world. And what I'm hearing is that, so we've started to get a little bit of flowering in Vermont, but not a whole lot. And I think that's because we haven't had enough coldness. We've had a little bit of cold, but not enough to actually trigger the flowering yet. Next question.
More in the room.
So the soil in Iran was, I couldn't tell either clay or sandy.
Well, those pictures, it looks very heavy, like very heavy clay. Our experience has been that saffron does not do well in heavy clay soil, mostly because it gets waterlogged. Now in Iran, my sense is that it may never get waterlogged because it doesn't rain enough. But in our area, we have some parts in Vermont that are very heavy clay, and we've had problems with corms dying in that particular situation. So it is a somewhat unique situation in Iran, different than what we have in the United States. And one of the challenges when we work with growers from all over the country, what is true in Vermont is not necessarily true for Massachusetts or Connecticut or Pennsylvania. And so I have to be very careful when I'm talking to growers from other parts of the country, because corms can respond really differently in those different settings.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So you're right. There's a saffron farm in Texas. Oh, I'm forgetting what it's called now. But I am aware that there's at least one. But my ignorance comes through because I think of Texas as just being hot and dry all the time. But obviously that is not always the case. And even in the southeastern US, there are some high elevation places that might be suitable for saffron. Okay, so you've got the general life cycle down, right?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Okay, here we go. Oops, I gotta move this now. There. I don't know why it's not moving. There. Okay, so when we first started to work on saffron, we tested, so according to the literature now, it says that you can grow saffron in plant hardiness zones 4 to 8. When we first started working on it and looked in the literature, it said zone 7 to 9, they said. And obviously, so when we started, we didn't even know if they would survive the winter. And in fact, with that in mind, our original plan was to grow saffron in milk crates in high tunnels. Do you know what a high tunnel is, everybody?
Yeah.
We're seeing a few no's. You can explain it.
Pardon me?
There were some people who did not know what a high tunnel was.
Okay, a high tunnel is basically an unimproved greenhouse, usually a plastic hoop house, usually with no heat, though now they're getting fancier and fancier. Now in Vermont, practically every vegetable grower has at least one high tunnel, and many of them, they only grow in high tunnels. They don't grow out in the field anymore because our weather is so unpredictable. They prefer to grow where it's a slightly more controlled situation. It also extends the growing season on either end of our winter, such that it is. Anyway, so our original theory had been that we could grow saffron in a high tunnel in milk crates. Now, most growers in Vermont, they use high tunnels to grow tomatoes. That's a really high value crop. So I knew that if I said, oh, why don't you grow saffron in a high tunnel, they would just laugh at me, because they would say, I have to grow tomatoes in that. And so that's why we originally came up with the idea of growing it in milk crates, so that they can move the milk crates out when the season was done, or when it wasn't so cold. But anyway, then we found that really they survived the cold conditions, even in zone 4 in Vermont. So you can see there what the annual minimum temperatures are for these different zones. And to give you an appreciation for Austin, Texas, that's zone 8B, which is 15 to 20 degrees F, compared to ours, which is minus 20 to 15. Anyway, it's quite a bit colder up here. Anyway, so in this research that we did, we looked at saffron yield and corm survival and reproduction of the new corms, and we found that saffron yield was equal or better to what is reported in Iran and some of those areas, and that the saffron survived even in the coldest zones. Okay. Now, step 2, make a plan. So my sense is that most of you, maybe all of you, are not envisioning growing saffron commercially, that you're just going to grow a little bit in your backyard. However, there are a lot of people that are interested in saffron as a crop to grow when they retire. A lot of teachers sometimes contact me and say, hey, when I retire in a couple of years, I want to have a source of income, a small source of income to supplement my Social Security or pension. And so it's possible even for you to do that. Anyway, so assuming that you might want to grow it semi-commercially or even in your backyard, you need to find a good place to grow it. And ideally, it should be well drained, fine sandy loam. And if it's a little heavy, you might want to add organic matter. You might want to, for a couple of years, fortify the soil with a cover crop to increase the organic matter and to make it not as heavy, to increase the drainage. Then when you're ready to, so in this top picture, you can see that this is down in, I think, North Carolina. Well, they didn't heed my suggestion, and they plowed up this field, and then they planted directly into the sod. And they had a terrible time with the weeds, because weeds can be a big issue. So they didn't do it the way you really should do it if you're getting serious about it. But then you order the corms usually in March or April, and they come in August. Okay, so where do you buy the corms? So there's all sorts of places you can buy them. You can go online and search for saffron corms or crocus sativas or wholesale saffron corms. Like I said, most of the corms are grown in Holland. There's a few US growers now that sell their corms. In fact, I bet that guy in Texas might do it. I know there's a guy in California, Southern California, that might do it. Some buy Dutch corms in bulk, and then they resell them. So, in general, organic corms are not commonly available from Holland. And one of the reasons is because there are very strict guidelines for corms that are shipped to the US. And so they need to make sure that there's no disease on them. Of course, that may have changed now because I'm not sure there's an APHIS anymore that cares about that. But it used to be that they would have to get certified. And so producers in Holland just did not feel comfortable selling organic corms. Again, you buy them, usually you order them in March or April, and then it comes in August or September. You need to make sure that you're ordering Crocus sativus. It's very easy, online. It may say buy saffron corms, but you need to make sure that they're Crocus sativus and not something else. You should ask the supplier where and how the corms were grown, how they were stored, and what size they are. Now, and I'll go into what size you should get in a minute. In our particular case, and there's many places you can buy corms from. We usually get them from Rocco Saffron. It's a small company. It's owned by a young man who has cared about the US industry for a really long time, and I like supporting him. But there are many other places you can buy it from. Okay, so what size corm should you buy? So usually if you are buying from a good supplier, they will tell you what size corms they are, and they are usually sold based on the circumference of the corm, not the diameter. So when they say 9-10 corms, that means they're 9 or 10 centimeters in circumference. And this gives you an idea of the price. The larger the corm, the more expensive they are. And the bigger the corm, the more likely you will get flowers the first year and more secondary corms in year 2. We usually suggest that people get a range of different sizes, so that even if they don't all bloom, at least they get enough that bloom. Okay.
We do have a question online.
Yeah.
So Rachel wants to know whether they would be dug up and refrigerated each year the same way that we,
Oh,
or whether.
good question. No, you don't refrigerate them at all. That's the bizarre thing. That's what's so weird about it. If you dug up your corms in July after they go dormant and you put them in the refrigerator, they'll say, oh, it's fall. I got to start sprouting. So actually, it's more important to keep them warm. So in Holland, they dig up the corms in late June when they go dormant. They wash them, they dry them very carefully, and they put them in a temperature-controlled room that is hot. That's room temperature or above, so 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So the good thing about buying corms from a good supplier, you will know that they have been holding them in a hot condition so that they don't sprout prematurely. Okay. So no, you do not dig them up. They're essentially a perennial crop. They're semi-perennial in that you plant them 1 year and you keep them in that same place for 4 years. And each year, those the mother how do I put it? Though the mother corm dies, it leaves the secondary corms. So every year, ideally, the number of corms you get increases until they start crowding each other out. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So many people say, oh, should I dig up my corms now? And no, you should not. Because it will reduce it kind of disrupts the corms to have to be dug up and then replanted again. And it's a waste of time. As long as you have an area, that you're going to dedicate to saffron. Now, some people, you can see up in the right here, this is our, oops, sorry. I gotta go back there. This is how we used milk crates. We would put weed cloth inside them to hold the soil, and then we would plant the corms into that. The one advantage of that is that it's really easy to move them around. And even if you had a small garden, you could, when the corms go dormant, you could just pile the milk crates up without disturbing them. Okay, so you choose the growing season the growing system that you want, a raised bed, in ground, in a container. You till the soil, and ideally you would either spread manure or maybe use a green, a cover crop, and then you till that in, and then you plant it. And so this over here, you can see this is a high tunnel here on the right-hand side, and they were growing it in raised beds. So that's another popular way to grow it. Okay, so they arrive in mid-August, the corms. You should plant them as soon as you can, 5 to 8 inches deep. Usually 5 to 12 corms per square foot, depending on how big the corms are that you got. And ideally, the corms should sprout within 30 days, give or take. And you can see down here at the bottom, here's the soil surface, and then you can see the corms that are planted down below. Okay. So the kinds of problems that we have up here, it may be different than what you have. We have real problems with deer, rabbits, small mammals that like to dig. And you can see, so this down below, this is what on the left-hand side, you can see what the grass, the saffron grass should look like. And right next to it is what it looks like after the rabbits get to it. So the trouble with that is, if the rabbits keep coming back, the corms will keep sending out leaves, but it depletes the corm so much that you get really small corms the next year. So this shows on the right-hand side, this is a bed that looks really nice with no rodent damage. And then you look at the one down below, this is what it looks like when the rodents got to it. So I don't know what kind of varmints you have down there, but probably you have a lot of the same ones that we have. There's also issues with disease, and fusarium is a common thing. And fusarium is either caused, there are bulb mites, which are these little tiny insects that are in the ground and they feed on the corms. They usually only come in maybe if a rodent has chewed a hole in the corm, or maybe damaged the corm is damaged a little bit, and the bulbs get in, the bulb mites get in, and they bring with them various diseases. So weeds are the other big problem, and what we do here in general is we cover them up with weed cloth, and that stifles the weeds, and they don't need water at this time of year because they're dormant. So it works out quite well for that. Okay, so then harvesting. So usually harvesting can be just a quick 2-week period, or it can last up to 35 days, usually October to November. And one of the things that I tell everybody is saffron is a food crop, so you need to be really careful to, wash your hands and keep the flowers clean. Usually it's ideal to pick them every couple of days. You want to wait until the dew has dried, but before noon, ideally, because they start getting a little droopy. They only remain sort of intact and harvestable for, well, it depends on the temperature, but 2 to 3 days maybe. Okay, now, so you can see here on the top right, there's some flowers, the blue, the one with the blue arrow, that's probably a little early to be picking it. The one with the red arrow is, that looks pretty good. That would be okay. And also the one in the middle, but the one at the bottom there, it's all wilted and it probably got wet because of the rain. And so I would just leave it there. Okay. So if you're picking a whole bunch of it, it's good to keep it out of the sun and spread it out, because they start transpiring and they can start to get kind of wet, and you don't want that. Okay, so now you dry it. So you spread the flowers on paper toweling potentially, especially if they're kind of wet. And then you separate the stigmas from the stamens and the petals. And I'm going to get to your question about what do you do with the petals in a minute. We did a little bit of research on how to dry it. And the most common way that people do it is they do it in a dehydrator. The one problem with most dehydrators that you buy online is they don't get as hot as we would like them to get. So really they should get to about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So ideally you might do it in an oven, but you can also do it in a dehydrator. It just takes a little bit longer for the saffron to dry. One of the tricky things is to know how long do you dry them for before you know they're dry enough? If you don't dry them long enough and then you put them in a jar, they will mold and they will smell really bad. So you need to make sure they're dry enough that they're a little brittle, but not so brittle that they're just falling into pieces. So it's a really subtle thing that you only sort of get to know when you've worked with it for a while. And after you've dried it, you let it cool for a short time, and then you need to immediately put it into a screw top container. Why do you think you need to put it into a container right away?
So that it does not reabsorb moisture from the room?
Yes, exactly. Well, and I'm impressed that you know that. I was talking to a grower the other day. She was Mennonite, actually. She had just started growing saffron, and I said, "Well, how do you dry it?" And she said, "Oh, I'm gonna dry it the old-fashioned way. I'm gonna just dry it out on my table." And I said, "Don't do that," because I had thought that that was a good idea too, until I tried it. And that's how they do it maybe in Italy or in Iran, but it's hot and dry there. The air in Iran and these Mediterranean areas, they are naturally dry. They don't have the kind of ambient humidity that we have in the air all the time. So it's really important to quickly put it into a container. You need to make sure it's a tight fitting jar or tin container. If you're using a tin, you need to make sure it's a food grade tin. You can get those online. And you need to store them in the dark. You need to hold the saffron for 1 month before you start using it, because it takes time for the compounds that impart the flavor and the aroma for it to sort of percolate or to react with itself. Okay, so just to give you an idea of how to prepare the the stigmas. So you've got the stigma, it's in 3 pieces there, and it all comes down to 1 piece. So these are the terms that are used in Iran. And so they, they're experts over there. And they usually, they take the stigmas and they take off the yellow bit, the style, and they sell that as a low cost saffron. It has some of the flavor and some of the color properties, but not anything like the rest of it. The more higher quality stuff. Sometimes they sell it as whole bunches like that, where they don't take anything off. Or other people take a little bit of the yellow, but they keep it all in one clump, so that the 3 stigmas are all connected together. The highest quality saffron in Iran, they don't have any yellow bits at all. It's just dark red. So, and that probably has the greatest flavor and the greatest aroma. Spanish saffron, Spanish saffron, they have their own names for how they classify it, and using sort of the same kind of principles. Okay. So now about the petals. Now, we usually throw away the petals because we don't have time to deal with them. But there was a grower up in Nova Scotia, and he decided he would try to dry both the petals and the stamens separately. And what you can see here in this little Christmas tree thing, at the very top is what the petals look like when they've been dried and then ground to a powder. He sells that powder to high-end restaurants, and they sprinkle it on the top of their, these days people are into plating so that you have a beautiful work of art. And so he's selling the petals that way. He dried them at between 100 and 105 degrees Fahrenheit for about 12 to 20 hours. So just to tell you, last year I thought, well, I'm gonna try drying it. So I had a bunch at home, and I'd been working so hard separating all the stigmas, and I thought, now I'm going to do the petals in the oven. And I started getting impatient. So I increased the heat, and they all burned. They all turned brown. So you have to be careful about what temperature you dry the petals at. This same grower tried infusing vodka with the purple petals, and you can see it turned into a nice purple colored vodka, which is kind of a cool thing. So there are opportunities to use the petals, but it's not commonly done. And then, someone read that in China, they like to soak their feet in the dried petals. So I tried that once, but I'm usually too busy. And so I did it one time. I didn't do it scientifically. I put both of my feet in there, so I didn't have a control. They seem pretty soft, but I don't know. Anyway, it's something that's worth, if you've got a few petals, I'd give it a try. But it takes a little bit of extra effort that I don't always have. Okay, so here are the active compounds in saffron. They're called phytochemicals. There's 3 key components: saffronol, which imparts the aroma, crocine, which does the color, and picrocrocine, which gives you the taste. Now, some in Iran, they have special laboratories where they test their saffron for quality, and there's a whole standardized international method using spectrophotometry. For growers in the US, I tell them it's not worth it, that most consumers don't really care what grade it is. And so it's kind of expensive. It's probably $500 to get your saffron tested. And if you're picking saffron for 30 days, which sample do you take? I don't know. So I have never really advocated that for that. Okay, so saffron by the numbers, just a quick rundown. It takes about 160 flowers to make 1 gram of saffron. These days, US growers are getting between $20 and $75 a gram. That's what they ask for, and they are selling out in general. Usually 2 to 4 flowers are produced by a single corm, depending on the size of the corm. Usually 1 corm makes 2 to 4 baby corms the next year. If you wanted to plant a whole acre of saffron, you would need between 200,000 and 400,000 corms. Takes about 13 minutes to pick 100 flowers, 23 minutes to separate them, and you can usually keep the same corms in the same bed for at least 4 years. Okay, so cooking with saffron, in case some of you don't know about it so much. So this sort of shows the step-by-step process. You start on the left here, you start with a dried saffron stigmas. You grind it up in a little mortar and pestle, and then you have a nice powder. And you put hot or boiling water into it, and you end up with this brew of a saffron infusion. Some people also prefer to infuse it in ice cubes, and so you put a few ice cubes in a bowl and you sprinkle the ground saffron on top, and it naturally gets infused that way. You can also just grind it and put it directly on the dish. Okay. Now, so why bother to buy US grown saffron? You can go online and buy it for maybe $5 a gram, maybe even less. So here's why it's worth buying US grown saffron. One, you know who grew it, and you know ideally how it was grown. You know it was harvested and separated ethically, not by people that are making $1 a day. You're supporting local or US growers, and many of them are working really hard to just make a living. And then I don't know which of all these is the most important, but one of them certainly is, you know, that it hasn't been adulterated. If you're buying it from a grower that you trust, you know they're not adulterating it. Okay. And that, my friends, is that. Any questions?
Yes, I know we had at least one question in the room.
It was from the text folks. Do you also plant in August here?
I can't hear you, so you'll have to repeat it.
For the people in the room who have grown saffron, whether they also plant in August here, given our much later frosting.
Yes, in general, that, and part of the reason is, so I have corms that I received from Rocco Saffron back in August, and we didn't get to harvest them all or to plant them all, and they are now beginning to sprout outside or just without the soil or anything. And so can I take this? I'm going to unshare my screen. Okay.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. I wanted to, because you can see me. Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm going to just get a couple of corms. One moment, please. You see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Oops. Sorry about that. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so that corm, we got it in August. It was just out in the air. And so it does get a little cold at night, or it was getting cold at night. And so it started to sprout, even though it's not in the soil, it's not getting any water. It's coming, it'll bloom. Even if I don't put it in the soil, it will bloom. Now, so that's from Hans, from Rocco Saffron. Now, see if I can. Oops, I gotta get you one other thing. I thought I got it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Those corms that I just showed you. These are 9/10s. That's 9 or 10 centimeters in circumference around, okay? Probably this is closer to 9. It's a little bit bigger. And it's worth noting, all these little side sprouts, those are going to be they will become baby corms soon, and then they will be the flowers for next year, okay? Now, in comparison, we got some corms. We're doing this little study on Pennsylvania corms versus Dutch corms. So see that?
Oh.
Holy crap! Look at that. This is from a little Mennonite woman. And I'm not saying that the Dutch, you could buy corms this big from Holland and they would cost you $1.13 or more. All of her corms were that big. We don't, up in Vermont, we don't get corm. We're lucky to get corms that size ever. Why do you think that is? How come they make such bigger corms down there? Look at these guys. They're huge. Why? Why are they able to grow such big corms in Pennsylvania?
Dirt.
Someone gives the dirt.
Nope. Though that might, in her case, she had beautiful soil. So that might have helped. That might have contributed. Why else?
The water.
Is it warmer?
Yes. How is it warmer though?
Soil temperature.
Soil temperature.
Longer growing season. So in Vermont, what happens? So let's say, so again, we plant this corm and it grows green leaves and stuff. And it sprouted in September. Even if we planted it last year, it'll begin to sprout in, well, some of the ones we planted last year, they're barely sprouting now. So, and that's because we haven't had a hard frost. It hasn't been getting cold enough this year. And so, but then, it always gets cold. Sooner or later, it's going to get cold, and probably sooner than I would like at this point, but not soon enough compared to those corms in Pennsylvania. So they probably are able to continue to photosynthesize through December. They might get a little bit of cold, but usually we get snow by the end of November or maybe mid-December, and then that'll stop. Our corms will stop growing until next spring. Again, next spring, those Pennsylvania corms will start getting warmer and start having a better chance of photosynthesizing in May. I mean, we're lucky to get much warm weather until Well, this will start growing again actively in Pennsylvania in, I don't know, March, early April. They start having spring flowers and stuff like that. Not that it's going to make flowers, but it's going to make those baby corms continue to grow to a bigger size. The bigger the baby corm is next year, the more flowers you will get. Okay. So we want to do a study now to see if we can put a low tunnel on our saffron corms. You know what a low tunnel is?
No.
Yeah.
Nope. A low tunnel is it's like a high tunnel, but it just goes over the individual bed or row. So it's usually 3 feet wide and it has a hoop, and then you put plastic over that hoop. And so we're wondering if we can increase the warmth where the I'll get to your question in a minute, Rachel. So that we're wondering if by putting those hoops over, we will be able to get a longer growing season here artificially. That's what we're want to test, because we want to have corms as big as theirs. So Rachel, what was your question?
So I'm wondering if it never freezes, would they grow as perennials?
You mean the mother corm would never die? No. Is that what you
Okay.
mean? Rachel. Rachel.
Well, because you mentioned that they stop growing when it freezes, but some years we don't have a freeze.
Right. But and I don't mean that they stop growing because it freezes. It's
Okay.
just it's too cold for photosynthesis. They're
Okay.
just sitting there. So we can have in our beds in Vermont, we can have 2 feet of snow on top of our saffron beds. And if we whisk the snow away, the leaves underneath will be completely green and look happy as anything. But they're not going to photosynthesize because they got no sun.
Ah.
And it's too cold. Even if there was, in fact, what we don't like is, and this is always makes me nervous, is if we have an open, what we call an open winter, where we get no snow, but it gets cold. And sometimes it can get very cold. And in those situations, the ground freezes a foot deep. And it's not good for the saffron. But we have to go with the flow. And you could say, well, why don't you just put mulch over it? Why wouldn't we put mulch over it?
Moisture.
Yeah.
Moisture. What else?
No photosynthesis.
Yes. And those varmints, those voles, they love straw or leaves or wood chips. Oh, they'd be happy as anything. So we don't recommend that, I'd have to say. Okay.
You have a question in the room?
Yep.
About, growing requirements of it, like what fertilizer, water, things like that.
Oh. That is a $64,000 million question that I just wish we could get the USDA to give us a little bit of money to test that, because I don't really know. I think we've done a little, just tiny little plots where we've put one 5-gallon bucket of compost versus 2 versus none. And sometimes it almost looks like if we put too much compost, they don't grow as well, that we don't get as many flowers. But I don't know enough about it to be able to say with confidence what the answer is. I think they're pretty they're pretty forgiving. The pH supposedly ranges from 6.5 to 8 or 7.5 or 8, something like that. So they're pretty tolerant of those things. Over the years, I would always get frightened when we would have a drought, because I would say, oh my God. And this was when Arash, who was the guy from Iran, I would say, oh, Arash, we need to start watering them. He goes, no, Margaret, no. And he's right. I hate to believe it, but these aren't getting any water at all, and they are going to bloom. I'm not saying that they're going to have great big blooms, but they will bloom. They won't have corms the next year, because probably, unless they get some soil and stuff. But then you have Texas, and it's dry down there, isn't it? It's either very wet or very dry. And so I can't tell you what saffron needs in Texas, particularly. I don't know. And it's only going to be when enough growers in different locations test it that then they'll know. But I'll just say one other thing. I know there's someone had their hand up. So I have this listserv, and if you're really interested, you could get on this listserv. And I sent a little email saying, hey, I've got flowers in Vermont. And oh God, all these people are sending little emails saying, I got my first flower, but I don't have very many. It's much later than last year. And probably that's because we had a really hot and dry summer, and it's only starting to get cold now. I suspect, and I haven't done all the reading that tells me this, but I think a corm is responding to multiple conditions. They're saying, I like it cold, but it's time. They may be saying, it's time. I want to start doing my thing. In Rocco Saffron, for example, they supply corms to people in South Africa and Australia. Obviously, they have a totally different growing season. So they're able to trick the saffron the first year into waiting. And the way they do it is they keep it hot. So these Pennsylvania corms, I put them in our furnace room where it's hot. You can see they're not sprouting. These guys, they got cold. Not really cold. They just got cold enough. They got 50 degrees. You need it to be 50 degrees. And you might say, well, how long? I don't know. I bet I could find out if I got a little bit of money. And that's one of my pet peeves. We cannot get any money from the USDA to save our soul. And their argument is there isn't a market for saffron in the US. And we can say, but the US is importing however many tons. They don't care. They don't believe me. They say it's too labor intensive. And they're right. It's too labor intensive. But especially now. But for small family farms, they're just sitting around relaxing. Now they might as well pick some flowers. So anyway, yeah, next question. I should be looking at this thing. There are 13 oh God, ecoregions. Well, I'm going to tell you something about how complicated some of this stuff is. So there was a grower out in California, and this was a couple of years ago. They had been growing great, having wonderful crops. You think of California as being perfect, pretty hot, pretty dry, blah, 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 just like Iran. And so they had really good soil. And it was a couple of years ago, and it was when you were having when they were having a big drought, a major drought that was going all year, not like the summer drought that we had in Vermont. So they said, "Oh, we need to water." So they watered the corms with drip irrigation, and then it got to be 100 degrees the next day, and within a very short period of time, most of their corms rotted. And they believe it was because, and I suspect they had some issues with fusarium already in already in their soil, and they added the water, and then they had the heat, and we all know that fungi love heat and humidity. And so it was a perfect storm for them. So,
Are we hearing no, like irrigation is not a good idea with
again, in Vermont, it's not a good idea. Even though I was tempted this year, I thought, oh God, it's been dry for, I don't know, 2 months in Burlington. But I resisted, and it was good I did, because we got a little bit of rain. So, generally speaking, not. The trouble is, so a grower in Iran complained, because they have some real drought issues there too, and they said, "Oh, our saffron isn't growing as well anymore, and it's because of the drought." And then they said, well, then no, this was I'm forgetting. There were a couple of different stories. Then another person said, "Yeah, I knew that grower. He never uses any fertilizer, so the field is really, infertile. So what's the problem? Is it that it's a drought? It's the heat? Is it because he's not fertilizing?" And so it's very difficult scientifically to come up with consistent conditions over multiple years. But I do think of Texas, because I don't know where I was. Oh, I know. I went online to look at your your plant hardiness zone, and they just changed the zones in 2023 or something like that, and you go to the map and it says from 2012 to 2023, Austin, Texas increased 3 degrees, and so if that happens every 5 or 10 years, you're going to get outside the sweet spot. It's going to get too hot for you. It might even get too hot. I think certainly in my lifetime, I don't need to worry. I'm going to be so dead by then. But somebody down in Florida said, "I want to grow saffron." And I said, "I don't think it gets cold enough down there." He said, "I think it does." And he tested it, and it didn't work at all. He must have gotten flowers the first year, but they didn't go anywhere. So you do want it to get a little cold. But if indeed your minimum temperature is 20 degrees, it might be okay. Now, someone said, "Hey, should I wait and plant them later?" No, because keep in mind, once you plant them that one time, you're going to keep them in the ground for at least 4 years, maybe longer. So you're not digging them up every year and reacclimating them. They're stuck with that site. And so plant them, they'll just sit there. They won't do anything until they've gotten the cold requirements that they want. Again, I think it's more than cold, but Okay. So there are 13.
So anyone who has questions in the chat, we will capture those questions
Okay.
and sure
And- okay.
we tell them to you and then we get all the answers. So I think
Okay, good.
we have one more question in the room.
Given very unique growing conditions, are there any plants you would recommend as companion plants to them?
Oh. So by companion plants, you mean what? So that you can make more money on the crop? On the soil?
Just to have like more yield or variety.
What's that?
Have more yield or variety.
Yeah. So if only we had some funding. We put in proposals to test that very thing. And I know there are growers that are doing it now. So there's some growers that are growing beans with great success. They're pole beans and the plants look beautiful. Some people have tried strawberries. I don't know if that's a good idea. I think cucumbers or pumpkins or squash would be really good, partly because it would choke out the weeds. Other ideas are mesclun, whatever you call that, the microgreens. You want a shallow rooting plant. So think shallow rooting. I think, and all sorts of things would go well. And then you could say, well, but then I'm going to irrigate. Is that bad? Because you got to irrigate those things, especially in Texas. And so even in Vermont, you got to do it. And so I don't know. But basil is another one that people have tested. I don't know, but I think they'll do just fine if your soil is well drained. I think you could use drip irrigation without any problem. You just don't want the if you have a heavy clay soil, I wouldn't do it in that situation, because then that soil is just going to get waterlogged and then the corns will rot. But you know what I tell growers, because people have we get so many questions, they say, and they want me to have all the answers and I don't have them. And a scientist, when we approach a question, we have to have replicated trials and we have to have multiple plots and multiple years. And the simplest question requires a whole field to answer them. And when you have a whole field, you need a whole bunch of students to do the work. And it's really hard to get people to do work, students to do the work. They don't want to work anymore. And so, so that's why you as growers can answer a whole bunch of these questions, not just for yourself, but for all your friends, for other growers. So like the pedal thing. So that guy followed up and he figured out what would make it work. And I hope other growers will say, oh, I'm going to try that, and some will, and some get, they don't have time or whatever. But the more that we share our results and our ideas, the better. And that's why I love saffron growers. They're very, they don't hold their information close to their chest. They're sharing it openly. And that's what maple syrup producers do. And that's what saffron growers do. And really, I'm seeing lots of growers in general. They're much more open than a lot of other industries in the world. And that's a good thing. Okay.
Do you have time for? Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Seems like you would put perennial crops mixed in with the perennial bulbs. That way you would disturb the soil and they could go as companions better.
Wait, say that again. Well, like what kind of plants?
Perennial. perennial plants, natives, asparagus, things like that, that you don't rip out of the ground every year. Seems like they would grow better as companions, because the forms are perennial.
Well, you got to be careful about competition. So, for example, clover. Some people, people love clover. It's a beautiful, it's our state flower, but it, as a weed, it is not very nice. It is really hard to get out, and it has a pretty deep root, and I think it would compete for the nutrients from saffron. I'm trying to think of some other perennials that, well, strawberries are an example. Someone tested strawberries as an idea, and they believed, they experienced that the nice thing was that the strawberries, once they expand out after a year or two, they tended to suffocate the weeds, but the saffron would come up between the strawberries. The thing I don't know about strawberries, for example, though, is if you have a whole bunch of leaves from the strawberries, and then the corms start coming up, is it going to be harder to pick the flowers? I don't know that. I haven't tested it, but those are one of the issues. And that's why I sort of like some of the crops that I mentioned are crops that usually finish before the saffron is ready to harvest, because you don't want to be you couldn't harvest saffron in between squash plants. That wouldn't work very well. So you have to sort of use common sense about some of those things.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Dr.
Yeah.
Skinner. We really,
Okay, sure. Okay, bye.
bye.